Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself standing in front of your bathroom mirror, looking back at your reflection. What thoughts and feelings do you have as you stare back at your own face? Are you proud of what you see, or does self-criticism begin to creep in? Now, keeping your eyes closed, raise your hand if you've ever had a negative thought about your physical appearance. Now, keep your hands raised and open your eyes. Look around the room at everybody with their hands raised. So many of us right here in this room have struggled with our self-image, myself included. Growing up, my curly hair was my biggest insecurity. My curls never failed to remind me that I didn't look like everybody else around me, that I was totally different from the standard. But it wasn't until much later, though, that I realized my hair wasn't the issue. The issue was the unrealistic standard that I was up against. But this isn't a matter of our individual insecurities. It's a larger issue, an issue that's been ingrained in our society for centuries: beauty standards. To understand how these standards truly have an impact on our identity, we have to look back to the past. And not just 1 or 2 generations. We have to go back to a time when people engaged in barbaric practices just to be considered beautiful. In early China, small feet were a symbol of beauty, and young girls often underwent foot binding. This was the breaking of the foot until the toes collapsed on each other, making the foot smaller but leading to extreme disfiguration. Beginning in the Victorian era, the tapeworm diet became a popular tactic for rapid weight loss. However, this practice only led to brain parasites, organ damage, and even death in the most extreme cases. In accordance with this, propaganda furthered the idea that it was a must to be slim in order to be accepted by society. Fearing rejection, women began disfiguring their bodies. Women wore tight corsets to achieve the hourglass figure, but the corsets were often laced so tightly that women experienced fainting, organ damage, and even deformed rib cages. But beauty is pain, right? As European ideals of beauty came to dominate, colonization helped to reinforce these standards, which shaped global perceptions of beauty. European culture, ideas, and beauty standards rapidly spread to the New World. Features like light eyes, pale skin, and straight hair became the new standard, and they still are today. This shift glorified the features of white Americans while simultaneously establishing the foundations for racial oppression in the Americas. Indigenous groups were labeled as uncivilized, savage beasts, which only reinforced the idea that they were inferior to Europeans. The link between skin color and morality became increasingly prominent during this time as well, with white skin implying purity and dark skin being tied to sin. This deeply affected the self-worth of people of color, and internalizing these beliefs only left generations of minorities with feelings of inferiority and ugliness. This is especially true for Sydney Clark, founder of the Mending Wall Project, which promotes equity and diversity. Sydney has noticeably darker skin than her mother and her sister, to which she claims is the reason for being treated so differently than the rest of her family. In public, strangers would often compliment her mother and her sister, but wouldn't even acknowledge Sydney. People even questioned whether she was related to her family because of her skin color. These interactions only caused Sydney to long for lighter skin, to better fit in with her family, but also to adhere to the standards that society obviously valued so much. Sydney has since expressed self-hatred for her race and her skin color, wondering why it was her fate to be born so different from the norm. Sydney's struggle is a shared experience among people of color, rooted in beauty standards that often exclude minority groups. And the rise of social media has only amplified these standards. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat showcase narrow ideas of beauty, which are often promoted by our favorite influencers. Through their appeals to young audiences, people like Alex Earle and Kim Kardashian reinforce these standards. Their public personas as women who proudly alter their bodies perpetuate the idea that young men and women need to change themselves in order to be accepted. This limits how beauty is defined, and it makes it harder for those who don't fit the mold to feel beautiful. But here's the catch. Even these influencers aren't as authentic as we think they are. So many influencers and celebrities today use Photoshop and filters to manipulate their features to perfection. While these can be fun tools to enhance our photos, they play a powerful role in shaping our self-image. We all know about the endless filters on Snapchat and Instagram, but one in particular that struck me was the permanent glam filter on Snapchat. This is a filter that completely retouches your face, giving you a full face of makeup and even lightening your skin. There's even an option to select Permanently Show Filter, meaning that every time you open Snapchat, the filter will automatically appear on your face. While this can be fun, especially on bad days, it, once again, perpetuates the idea that we have to look a certain way to be accepted, or even just to send a funny picture to our friends. In a recent study conducted by Yale Medicine, research found that overconsumption of social media can actually overstimulate the brain's reward center and trigger pathways comparable to addiction. This damages the self-esteem of many adolescents because their brains and their identity are still being developed. This is especially true for people of color, since beauty standards and racism closely intersect. For people of color, these standards are not just about fitting in or looking a certain way. They're about identity, dignity, and belonging. For centuries, people of color have been demeaned, told that their features are less than, undesirable, and that they should change themselves to look whiter. And the pressure to conform to these narrow standards is something that I personally have felt deeply. As I mentioned before, my curly hair was my biggest insecurity. Being the only person in my entire family with curly hair only made me feel like more of an outsider. Growing up, I struggled to find ways to wear my hair curly and to accept myself the way I was. In elementary school, all the girls in my friend group had straight hair, except for me. I vividly remember looking at my best friends in kindergarten and thinking, if I could just have that perfect straight hair, all my problems would be gone. I'd convinced myself that if I could just change the one ugly part of myself, that I'd finally feel beautiful, that I'd finally fit in, and I'd finally feel good about myself. So when I was 8, I started straightening my hair. Every day, I would wake up, get ready, and grab my flat iron, hoping that by straightening my hair, I could make it look like the hair I envied so much. As you can imagine, it didn't stop here. I kept straightening my hair for years and years after this occurrence, eventually to the point of no return, when my hair got so damaged that I had no choice but to stop straightening it and to wear it curly. And that's just what I did. I wore my hair curly for a whole year, and I hated every single day of it. I didn't see it as beautiful in the slightest. I saw it as an ugly part of myself that should be hidden away. During this time, I seriously struggled with my self-image, and I hated the person looking back at me in the mirror. But eventually, something began to shift for me. I realized that the hair I envied so much was never going to be mine. No matter how many times I ran the flat iron over my curls, it would never change the fact that I was born with curly hair. So, I decided to let go of the idea that having straight hair was the key to my happiness and to embrace my hair the way it was naturally. I began to see my hair not as a flaw, but as a part of who I am, a part of my identity and a part of my heritage. I began to broaden my idea of what perfect hair looks like, and I began to accept myself the way I was. I began to see my hair as a reflection of my uniqueness. When I look in the mirror now, I don't just see someone with curly hair. I see somebody who's embraced their biggest insecurity. Through this journey with my hair, I realized that I had the power, that I didn't need to change any part of myself to fit into somebody else's standard. I realized that I had the power to create my own standard. So the solution is simple. We need to redefine beauty. Beauty is not about changing ourselves to fit into the mold that society has created for us, or changing ourselves to look like everybody else. Beauty is about embracing the things that make you unique. Now when I straighten my hair, it's not done out of self-hatred, but done with purpose. For too long, we've let society dictate what beauty means to us and what beauty should look like. But it's time to push for a more inclusive definition of beauty and to embrace diversity. Through my own experience, I realized that we as individuals have the power to create our own standards for what we think is beautiful and to reject the standard that society has projected onto us. So I urge you to challenge these standards. The next time you look in the mirror and you begin to pick yourself apart, stop. Take a step back and try to embrace the way you look naturally. Understand that you have the power to create your own standard for what you think is beautiful, because only then will you truly be able to love and accept yourself. Thank you.